"Look, darling, isn't the snow beautiful tonight?" She said nothing, simply remaining stiff in the aged wooden chair. He smiled and continued to sip from his mug of hot chocolate. He found her cold, silent demeanor adorable, one of a number of things he had come to find irresistible about her. She just sat there, staring with an expression of permanent fright back at him from in front of the window. Behind her, he could see the white specks as they fell in the slow, soothing flurry. He looked up at the ancient grandfather clock. 11:30 p.m. He smiled and whispered to her, "Not much longer now, my sweet Ellara." He got up and made his way to the blaze in the hearth. He began pouring himself some more of the piping hot cocoa before looking back to the window, meeting gaze once more into her fatting baby blue eyes. "Why don't you have a mug, my love?" Still, only silence served to answer his offer. He softly grunted in amusement before then closing the top of the kettle. He took another sip as he continued to watch her. God, how she looked so beautiful. Ellara, the sole warmth of his heart, sitting silent and peaceful on the old chair of antique mahogany, shrouded in the old white gown he had seen on her since first setting his eyes on her. He always thought it made her look akin to the paintings of the Virgin Mary herself. God, if only he were a painter. He would sometimes think he'd create a masterpiece from this scene alone to rival Dali or Da Vinci. If he were a writer, he would craft a tale with more potent emotion than even Poe at his most dreary or bleak. As the snow continued to fall outside, he could feel the air in the small den area become colder, even if just ever so slightly. "Why don't you come sit with me by the fire?" he said as he started to stoke the blaze in the furnace until the heat from its dance upon the oak kindling returned. Still, she merely sat in her chair in front of the window. With a warm smile, he sat down his mug of hot chocolate and went over to the window. "Here," he said as he began trying to push the chair from behind over to the hearth. "Allow me." About 2 or 3 feet from the hearth, Ellara began to slump forward till she had fallen from her chair. "Oh dear," he exclaimed, chuckling. He shivered again, feeling the unnatural chill pervade the room around. "Come now, Ellara. There's no need to be upset. It'll all come together soon." Fixing her back upright, he continued to push the chair the rest of the way to the hearth. "Now, isn't that much better, dear?" She was still as silent as ever. Yet, her face could say both everything and nothing at the same time. Her eyes glinted with the reflective glow of the flame's wild dance, which also served to illuminate the rest of her pale, distraught face. Even as it looked now, defined in much of its morbid detail by the flames, he still felt hopelessly entranced by her face. He checked the clock again before rummaging around in his shirt pocket. 11:40. From his shirt pocket, he produced a small, wilted mistletoe. He sighed, the grim cloud of reality accentuating itself to him once again. He had come to both look forward to it as well as dread this night, Christmas Eve. It wasn't quite time yet. Soon, it would all be over, but not yet. Attempting to void this cloud from his mind, he stuffed the small mistletoe back into his pocket and walked over to the table beside the window and placed one of the untitled records onto the phonograph and placed the needle onto its third track. It was one of his favorite tunes that began playing. Though for his own reasons unknown, He could never remember the name of the composition or its composer. Would you care to dance to pass the time, my love? He walked over to the chair and took her soft, cold hand before shifting her to her feet. Now, standing before him, the cloud of anxiety tightened its grip on him. "You look beautiful, my dearest Ellara," he said, with a shaking voice. He could hear her voice resonate distantly within the back of his mind, sounding as though it were echoing from the peak of a mountain. "In life or in death, I will always have your heart, Thomas, and my kiss will be the sole warmth of your body, your heart, and your soul." Slowly, carefully, he began to shuffle around the room with her limply hanging in his arms. He tried, of course, to keep her braced upright against his chest, to no effect. In spite of this, though, he merely waltzed on with her, still smiling warmly at her. The longer he stared into those two stiff, oceanic-hued irises, the more those horrible, maddening memories returned to him. Memories of that first fateful night. He lost himself to the lust of his dearest Ellara. The night that would spell the beginning of his own undoing. Could almost see it now in every exact detail, looking into her cold, frozen eyes. The long walk down the icy road, the night sky, the gas-lighted lamps that stood to sparsely pepper the white-blanketed ground with their dim glows. It was deathly cold that night, only just over a month to the day before now, and he was walking alone from another evening, toiling at the local market. He had made this very same walk many a night before, but this was different for him. How could he have not been known exactly? Nevertheless, something had changed in an almost supernatural manner in his mind that night. It had become very late when he saw her for the first time. There, by the street lamp, she stood, shrouded in a dress as white as the very snow. And oh, those eyes, those baby blue eyes that immediately seized him and kept him spellbound. He felt a sense of tranquil warmth spread throughout his body, with the image of that first shy smile she gave him when he saw him. That smile of fragile innocence, and yet of a cunning nature. He saw that she was trying to hang something from the top of the post when he began to approach her. When he drew near, he could see that it was a mistletoe that she was attempting to hang, the very same one he now kept in his pocket as he danced on. Hello there," he greeted. "Is it not just a tad early for these?" She responded with that same playfully sly grin and replied, "The heart doesn't lie, and my heart tells me that the time is just right." "The time for what?" he asked, confused. She giggled. "The time for one's heart to be warmed by a lover's kiss." He wasn't quite sure what she meant, but he somehow felt she was right. He could see she was struggling to hang the mistletoe. "Here, may I?" She gave him that softly sweet smile and handed him the mistletoe. He then hung it from the top of the gas-fueled street lamp. "There we are, hung where you and all others can see it." Her smile widened as she chuckled. "You know what they say?" she asked him in a balmy, almost seductive tone. He looked to her, intrigued. "The mistletoe is deadly if you eat it, but the kiss is even deadlier if you mean it." He laughed before losing himself once again into her eyes. He felt an extreme sense of warmth pass through him. It was as though he were next to a bonfire, and he even began to unfasten his winter garbs. Before he could do or say anything, she placed a slim, tender hand upon his chest. Instantly, a cavalcade of emotions ran down in a torrential downpour inside of him. Suddenly, all perception of the world around him was lost. He continued to lose more of himself into her eyes, those light baby blue whirlpools. "What's your name?" He said nothing. He could only barely perceive the sound of her voice. "What is your name, sir?" Still transfixed in her stare, he jabbered out, Thomas." She smiled and continued to caress his chest tenderly, now working her hands up and around his neck. She looked up to the mistletoe and then back to him, her grin growing. "Will you kiss me, Thomas?" she cooed. "Kiss me near the mistletoe." His body began to act before his mind would register their actions. Slowly, he began to lean down to her, his eyes feeling heavier and heavier with each inch. Finally, their lips met, and he felt as though he was locked in an angel's embrace. She would break the union first, turning away to leave with no words except to say, "I'll be waiting for you, love." He stood frozen, still spellbound. Eventually, his stupor broke, and he found himself stupefied, unaware of where he was or what had happened. In that moment, only one thing was certain: he was extremely cold. Such would remain the case for the remainder of the eve. It was that night, curled under his comforter, that he would see her face again. He would hear her voice again, the ever so seductive sound. "Kiss me, Thomas. Kiss me near the mistletoe." Such feverish infatuation mixed triflingly with a deathly cold robbed him utterly of sleep that night and well into the coming morning. And this would carry on for the rest of that week, until eventually he no longer saw her in his dreams. Her face and her voice had faded into little more than an obscure set of features and sounds he never could quite put together. That was until the Sunday evening, when he was once again returning home from the market, passing by that very same street lamp. And as if expectantly, she stood again by the street lamp, with mistletoe hanging from its top, shrouded in her same white gown, beckoning him to her with those eyes. And there it was again, that warmth that spread through his body, the earth that had felt entirely absent since that night for reasons he could never place. "I knew you'd come," she said, bearing that same seductive smile from before. He froze, trapped once again in her stare. Absently, he began to trudge towards her. When he reached her, she once more unfastened his garbs and began caressing his chest. He could only stand and watch her, his mind completely blank. "My God, Thomas, you're so cold." Her voice, while still sultry and smooth, took on an almost motherly tone when she spoke. Indeed, he felt like a child again, warmed by her preternatural touch. "Let me warm you with a kiss." Again, her hands slithered up from his chest and around his neck, and he instinctively lowered himself again to meet her lips. And again did the overpowering heat inside him flare. She would break away again. And again, he would be left alone by the street lamp, with only a fragmented sense of recollection of what had transpired. That night, too, resulted in restlessness. That night, writhing in his bed, Thomas would dream of snow, of the gas lamp, of her beautiful eyes, her beautiful face, of the mistletoe. Deadly if you eat it, deadlier if you mean it. He could take it no more. He had to find this woman, this elusive temptress. Throwing on his heaviest winter garbs, he set out amid the bitter cold night air. The year's snowfall had begun to rain down earlier that afternoon, and had by then formed into a thick white blanket upon the ground. Slowly, he staggered through the snow until he came once more upon the street lamp. His legs were unable to hold themselves up any longer, and he fell to his knees in front of it, the mistletoe hanging down, jeering at him. His sight began to blur, as with each fleeting, labored breath, the winter air had done its damage, and now he would feel its bitter touch slowly pluck the life from him. First, he would lose any feelings he had in nearly every part of his body. Next, he would feel the ice slowly form over his eyes, shutting him out from his sight. Just before the vicious winter would have him, however, he began to see the vague outline of a figure gliding towards him. He, of course, couldn't distinguish any definition from the figure outside of the apparently human outline. The approaching figure almost seemed to blend with the surrounding snow. Only the long crimson hair braided around the figure's neck gave him clarity. It was her, or was it? As the figure approached closer, he began to notice more and more details that differentiated it from the dame he so feverishly sought. This new woman, while very similar in many of her features to the other, had much more pale, almost desiccated skin. Had he still the feeling in his body, Thomas would have begun sprinting for dear life. He could only lie and wait for this gruesome specter to have her way with him. He could feel his heart thunder and quake against his chest. With every inch, she gracefully floated across the snow. He wanted desperately to at least close his eyes, sparing himself the sight of whatever horror he would face at her whims. When she finally reached him, she froze before him, staring down to him with eyes that were only a faded resemblance of the baby blue gems he had been entranced by. The specter knelt down to him and placed its pale, bony index finger on his lips. To his amazement, the specter's finger wasn't cold or frigid, as he would have expected from one who looked as gravely as she. Rather, he felt the wave of heat begin to pervade him again. She then seized his chin in her frail hands and leaned in to kiss him. Instantly, all feeling returned to his limbs. He then stood up as he watched the specter turn to leave. "Wait," he exclaimed. She stopped and turned her pale, dead face to him once more. "Who are you?" She turned slowly before rushing to him in a startlingly fluid motion that was too quick for him to perceive. She was upon him again and taking him firmly by the throat, whispering into his ear in an almost too soft a whisper, "I am Ellara. I am the warmth of your heart, the blazing fire in your chest that you can never again live without." With that, she released him, and he watched her vanish far into the horizon before he could even blink. Just as before, he was left alone and bewildered, unable to remember what had just happened or why he had even come. The only thing he was able to remember were fragments of a face, the face of a beautiful woman, as well as the face of a ghastly corpse. Along with this, Thomas could hear a soft, rasping whisper swim through his mind. The voice was, of course, utterly indeterminate, without any sort of identity, or definition to its origin. A kiss from my lips will now and always be what keeps thy heart warm and beating, lest it submit to a cold, bitter end. That night was when his dreams of her first became vivid and clear. He saw her again, standing amid the snow, giving him that same dubious smile indicative of sinful desire. And looking upon this face, he fell helplessly into her whims and slowly walked to her. The snow began to flurry from above, and he could feel the chill begin crippling him again. The temptress extended her hand and curled her finger to beckon him closer. "Come, will you dance with me, Thomas?" His pace quickened, and his heart raced with both excitement and apprehension, until eventually he broke into a sprint to her. To him, she seemed so close, and at the same time so far away the further he sprinted. At last, he reached her and was promptly seized into her embrace, and like he was now in his living room with her, they waltzed about amid the white expanse. All the while, his attention was fixed to her radiant smile, augmented by those baby blue irises. "Kiss me, Thomas," she crooned to him with that angelic voice. He closed his eyes and leaned into her with anticipation. Likewise, she would yield her lips to him, and he felt the intensity of the sun burst within him. Slowly, however, he watched in growing fear as her face slowly devolved into that familiarly haunting, necrotic visage his subconscious mind. A gasp escaped him. He shoved her away and attempted to flee. Something caught his feet, and he fell prostrate into the snow. She was once more upon him, leaning down to him with those cold, dead eyes. She knelt down and reached her hand down to him, clutching something small and frail in her withering hand. Shaking, he looked to see that it was a small mistletoe. "You're so cold, Thomas," she rasped in a ghoulish hiss. "Come warm your heart with my lips, love." "No, no, go away," he exclaimed as he felt the crippling chill return once more, causing his blood to begin to freeze solid. All throughout his body, he slowly lost all sensations of touch, and his eyes started to freeze over again. Her lips opened once more, and she spoke. "You can't deny me long. Without me, your heart, your soul will rot in a cold, icy bed." As darkness would have him, Thomas watched as the ghost poisoning the mistletoe high above them leaned forward to his right ear and whispered, "I'll be waiting, love." It was in that instant that he awoke, bolt upright with a frightened shriek. For a time, Thomas just sat there, gasping frantically as though he were a fish being held above the water. Eventually, he was able to regain his composure. Yet, he still felt wrong. It was more of an empty sensation, like he had had something removed from within him. What, how, or why, however, were questions that continued to elude him. But whatever it was, it would cause him to feel perpetually cold for many days and nights to come, regardless of what he wore or how close he would sit by the blazing hearth. One thing did slowly mold into at least a minute's certainty to him. Somehow, this strange phenomenon presently plaguing him was likely due to some sorcerous whim of this beautiful yet mysterious dame that dominated his subconscious mind. Unable to sleep, Thomas pondered how he might be able to rid himself of this apparently strange curse, eventually concluding that no matter how strong his desire for her was. He would not heed her summons. Such proved to not be as easy as he had thought. However, every day from rise until fall of the sun, the phantom chills would menace him without end. Constantly he felt as though his blood had been turned to solid ice, despite at almost all times wearing his heaviest of garbs. Thomas would spend most of each following afternoon over those next 3, and 2 weeks huddled next to his hearth, constantly stoking the kindling to draw more heat from it. He would only eat scalding broth and lightly prepared stews with steaming cups of tea or coffee or cocoa. In spite of all of this, still he was always so deathly cold inside and out. Eventually, on the Monday of the week before now, he ran out of these commodities and was forced to venture out against the wrath of the cold. He had very little money by then, having received word early that past weekend that he had lost his job at the market due to his seclusion. Still, he had to find some way to banish the bitter cold that was crippling him. It was as he was trudging through the snowbound streets of the market that amidst the many folks who had likewise gathered at the market that evening, his eyes fell upon her. She was standing at the bakery, her luscious crimson braided hair facing out to him, hanging down to her back. Almost instantly, a nauseating dread flooded through him. "You need me, Thomas," he could hear from deep in the pit of his subconscious. "You need my lips. I can feel it. Come, Thomas. Come to the mistletoe. Come hold me and kiss me." "No, no more," he screamed. Almost all eyes from the present congregation were now fixed to him, frightened and bewildered. Oblivious to the attention he had garnered, Thomas swiftly bolted to the young woman in front of the bakery, the seductress, the witch. With startling strength and intensity, he seized her by her shoulders and proceeded to violently shake her. "What have you done with me?" he barked to her frightened face. Her eyes were wide and afraid, welling to the brim with tears. Who are you?" Though he could see the fear molded onto the young woman's face, he would not relent. "What do you want from me, devil?" She screamed and struggled frantically to free herself. To no use, Thomas was determined to end this madness that was robbing him of his body, mind, and his very soul. It would end there and now, even if it meant the death of him. "Answer me. Why have you plagued me like this?" "Let the lady go," demanded a nearby bystander in a gruff voice. A broad-shouldered man attired in thick animal fur garbs, indicative of woodland residency. Despite his hysterical frenzy, Thomas recognized the man to be none other than McDowell, the town's lumberjack. "She's a witch," Thomas exclaimed to the crowd as McDowell pried him away from the distressed woman and began dragging him out of the market square. "She's afflicted me with some form of curse. Please, you must believe me. She's trying to rob me of my soul." The crowd merely looked upon him with disgust and shame. Though, as he was being forcefully towed away, he thought, "No." He swore he could see the young woman's shocked face twist into one of sinister exultation. His own flailing against McDowell's restraint was feeble at best, not emptying his iron grasp in the least. Finally, Thomas was cast face down into the snow. "Stay down if you know it would be good for you," he heard McDowell demand before turning and making his way back to the market square. Laying in the frigid snow, Thomas's mind was lost in a mile that bordered on confusion, fear, and pure madness. Why is she doing this to me? What does she want from me? Why don't they believe me? Tried as he might, no answers came to him, pushing him further to the edge of complete collapse. Making the matter worse was that he felt the chill now with more potency than ever. It wasn't long before he'd succumbed to the elements yet again. Unconsciousness assuming full control over his mind. The first image to assault his hollow dream was, of course, her leaning over and jeering. In life or in death, your heart will always be mine, Thomas. He desperately tried to rid her presence from his mind, to no purpose, regardless of how he would.